How's it going, everybody? Today, I'm super excited to give you a first look at the new XLCS Designs cage for the Lumix S9. Now, this cage has been available for a couple of weeks now, just getting around to the video today. Most of the accessories from XLCS Designs across our other cage systems will work with this cage, but today we're going to go over some of the highlights, some of the features of this new cage, and why I think it is probably the best option for you if you are a shooter and a user of the Lumix S9. Now, as with all of our cages, this is CNC machined out of one single piece of 6061 grade aluminum, anodized black. The significance of it being one piece means that it's a lot more robust. The camera loads extremely simply by simply sliding in through the back of the cage, pressing all the way in. It's a very snug, tight fit, not too tight. Obviously, it's easy to get in and out, but this keeps it from any sort of swivel once it's loaded inside the cage, and then simply mounts through one single mounting point on the bottom. And that's all you got to do to load your S9 into this cage. Extremely fast, extremely simple. So if you need to get this back out of the cage, if you're in a hurry, you need to load this on a gimbal or something else, all you got to do is remove that one screw and the camera will pop right out. As you've probably noticed, this is covered with a plethora of 1/4-20 holes, all on the top, bottom, and sides, allowing you to take pretty much any accessory you already own from any other camera line, any other system you're already using, and apply it to this cage. The cage itself is surprisingly lightweight. It comes in at just about 10 ounces or 260 grams. So while it is quite thick on the bottom and a full solid piece of aluminum, it really doesn't add a whole lot of weight to your camera. Now, some really cool built-in features on this cage. On this side, we've got a built-in NATO, as well as, again, those 1/4-20s and a 3/8-16 mount with RA spacing pins, allowing you to put any side handle you might already have, including the DJI Focus Pro handle, onto your camera without having to add any other accessories, giving you a lot of options for side-mounted handles when using this cage. Now, this built-in NATO rail is also seen on the opposite side of the cage, as well as on the top for adding a top handle. On the top, you've also got a cold shoe, a couple of strap loops, and right here next to the focal plane marker, we've got an M4 hole. So if you want to mount a small M4 screw onto your cage, if you're running a soft tape out on set, obviously all the buttons remain open and accessible here along the top. It fits very nicely in the hand. If you want it to be a little bit chunkier, we do have a wooden handle that mounts right to the front to add a little bit of a thicker grip for single handheld use if you're not mounting a handle to the side. And these will carry across a few of our other camera systems as well. Again, adding a really nice little accent there with that wood against the black and fattening up that grip. But even without the handle, it still feels fantastic in the hand. Really, just even if all you're doing is buying this cage for a little bit of added protection, you're not going to rig it out, this does really enhance the shooting experience just by giving you a slightly better grip while also protecting the plastic body of this camera. Now, on the face of the camera, we've got places to mount our direct-to-cage 15mm rods and dog bone adapters. We'll get to those in a second, as well as our various adapter locks for mounting and locking lens adapters to the cage. On the back of the cage, very cool, we've got the points here for mounting more 15mm rods, as well as another strap loop. Now, on the bottom, a couple of cool notable features here. First and foremost, you'll see right here we've got an AirTag holder for you. So obviously you can help keep track of your gear while traveling. A little door is included with it that goes right on top, screws in with a couple of quick screws, and sits flat and flush with the bottom of the cage. Now, another thing you'll see right here, we've got a cutout on the side. This serves two purposes. First being that this bottom part of the cage is a little bit thick. That is to accommodate the 15mm rods that sit on the back so that it can still sit flat while those rods are connected. But we want to be sure that that didn't make it difficult for you to get the SD card out. So this cutout also allows you to get your fingers in behind the card when popping it and sliding it in and out of where it sits within the card door. The second purpose of this is that it is a bottle opener. Again, it's a travel camera. You're on the go. At the end of your day, you want to enjoy a nice cold one, so you can pop out your bottle opener. Now you got yourself something to enjoy your day with. Needed that. Now, something I want to point out here, and you'll notice this on our storefront, is that we actually have two versions of this cage. One that is designed to allow you to use the MOFAGE POCO PL to L mount adapter, which has interchangeable ND filters built into it. Now, in the standard version of this cage that has the built-in NATO on both sides, the NATO here somewhat gets in the way of the tray on the MOFAGE. You can use the MOFAGE with it. It will load onto the camera in the cage just fine and still give you full access here to the dial. However, you cannot remove the filter tray if you get the standard version that has the NATO built in on the side. side. So if you plan to use the MOFAGE with any sort of regularity with your S9 and with this cage, I would suggest looking into the version of the cage that we have that was designed for use with the MOFAGE. Now, it is identical in pretty much every aspect, other than we went and machined off the point of the NATO on this side of the camera. So now you can see you got your MOFAGE on there. You can simply and easily slide your tray in and out. So again, if that's something you really need, if you're shooting with this adapter, definitely go for the version of the cage that has the NATO taken off. Something else that pairs with that, we've built an adapter lock specific to the MOFAGE POCO that will lock your adapter to the cage itself. Now, these adapter locks are very useful for a couple of reasons. One, that it takes some of the strain off of the native mount of your camera when putting larger PL mounted lenses onto it. And then the second is it removes that second point of contact, so you don't have to worry about any sort of extra wiggle added when pulling focus. And then if you want to remove the camera, you really only have to remove the two screws that are holding the adapter to the lock, and the adapter can come right off. So that your adapter lock can pretty much live on your cage, and then you can pop your camera back out and go about your merry way. Now, this style of adapter lock, we have a few different ones for it. We've got ones for the MC21 and MC31 from Sigma. We've got one for the EF to L from Viltrox, and we should shortly have one for the Nisi PL to L mount adapter. And all of those are specific to those adapters to let you keep a much more lower profile when using adapters and locking them to the cage. Now, a fairly well-known pain point of this camera is the HDMI port on this. It is a micro HDMI, which is, everybody who's ever worked with one knows they're extremely fragile, almost irreplaceable, and can kind of basically break your entire camera if you break that port. So we developed a very efficient HDMI cable lock for this camera cage. You open up the flap on the side that covers up the HDMI port. You take your HDMI lock and slide it in through the slot up there. You line up your cable and click it on into place. And this is to first get your general alignment. You then run in the screw here that grips the cable. You tighten that down, and then you then take another M3 screw that's provided, and you use that to run the lock and secure it to the cage itself. Basically, the way the system works is that you lock the cable to the lock, and you lock the lock to the cage, and that creates one of the most secure and strongest HDMI locks that you could ever hope for this. And once you have the lock in once, it's extremely fast and simple to unplug. You then just take the lock out of the back that holds the cable to the lock. You can leave the other one in place since it's now in alignment, and you pop your cable right out. Obviously, there are two ports on here. There's also a USB-C port. And even though you can't really do a whole lot with that camera right now, this same lock will work for the bottom as well, and you can run them both at the same time. And furthermore, if you're worried about your cables, they will come with these little metal shields and shims that you can slide in between your cable lock and your cable, between where the screw makes contact, to sort of just add a little bit of security, and you don't have to worry about piercing your cable with the screw. And then obviously, if you're going to remove the camera, you do have to take the lock completely off so that it's out of the way of the door, so you don't break it when popping that out. Just a heads up. Now, as we pointed out on the face of this camera, there are a lot of holes around the lens. These are for our direct to cage 15mm rods. There's a few different ways to mount these. You can obviously, run your rods directly to the cage itself. However, I found that sometimes when you're using larger cinema lenses, the diameter gets to be a little bit too large for some of the rods. If they're sitting too close, we have these little dog bones here that allow you to offset and angle these rods at different angles on the cage. I should also mention these dog bones come in two different sizes. We've got a 40mm and a 20mm offset, depending on how much you want to drop or offset your rods when mounting these onto the cage. We do have rods in three different sizes. We've got 3-inch, 4.5-inch, and 6-inch. We are developing a 9-inch that should be coming out soon. The 4.5-inch and the 6-inch will require this elongated mounting tool to reach the screws inside the rods. So just a heads up, when ordering those, you will need one of these if you don't already have one. The 3-inch rod can be used with a standard L key that's provided, but even with the 3-inch one, it's nice to sort of have this longer tool for reaching those screws inside. Mount in very quick and easy. And now you can see we've got our 15mm rods at proper spacing mounted directly to the cage and below the lens. So super handy, super cool feature. Helps you keep everything nice and tight and compact when rigging this out. Now, I will say when this is extended like this, it would make it a little bit tough to mount this to a longer plated tripod plate. So keep that in mind. But definitely for especially handheld work, this is a lifesaver in keeping a compact rig. Now, something I alluded to at the top is that on the back of this, we've also got 2 quarter holes at 60 millimeter center to center spacing with an RA spacing pin for mounting your rods directly to the back of this cage. And again, because we made this bottom a little bit thicker, that actually sits completely flat. So if you have this on a tripod mount, it can still leave you plenty of room for getting this mounted. What's really cool about this is that you can now mount a battery backplate directly to your cage without having to add a base plate to this. And one thing a lot of people ask for in cages these days is a built-in ARCA Swiss mount on the bottom. And while this cage doesn't have it, we opted instead for the AirTag door here. Couldn't fit them both in. What we do have are these, which are individual ARCA Swiss mounts. And what's great about these is that obviously they can carry from system to system. Whatever cage you've got, these will line up because they're standard 9mm spacings. And you can throw this right onto your cage. And the best part about this is after you've got this mounted, the bottom of it still sits open and you can still have access to the mount point that holds the camera into the cage, and your camera still pops right out, again, with both the rods and the ARCA Swiss plate in place. Now, as I mentioned before, this does have strap loops built into the cage on each side, as well as one on the bottom. If, however, you're using a strap that maybe is a little bit thicker for these that are built in, or you want different placement of the actual location of your strap, we do sell individual teeny tiny little camera strap loops, which you can then secure to any of the quarter 20 holes to change the placement of your strap loops. And then, as I'm sure you've noticed throughout this video at some point, we've got these really nice locking red body caps. These are also CNC machined out of aluminum. They're very durable, very strong, and they lock in. The locking points on this cap are machined all around it, so there is no one single right way to install this. Just as soon as it pops in at any orientation, you can still get it to lock in, making it a little bit faster and easier for you to get this mounted onto your camera. And with this in place, it's very nice in keeping that sensor covered and protected. Also quite iconic in its look. It's sort of the red on the black reminds me of the record button that you find on this and all other cameras just about. Right now this is only available in red. We are in the coming months going to be releasing a black and silver version, and then maybe launching more custom colors. Now, one of the things we strive for at XLCS Designs is not just making this a very riggable option for you, but also adding a lot of added protection. This is not just a tool, but it's an insurance policy, if you will. And we've got the all-metal single-piece design cage protecting your plastic camera, the locking body cap. You could essentially throw this into your camera bag and not have to worry about it getting smashed or banged, or the body cover falling off and exposing your sensor. All of that keeps this secure and safe for you, and that's the goal essentially of all of this. It's just help you get the most from your stuff. To rig it out to be a solid B cam or possibly an A cam for your project you're working on, to be able to keep it small and light for traveling, for run and gun use. Now, some of you may have recently noticed in a video from Cam Mackey a brass version of this. We did make that custom for Cam. However, there has been a lot of interest from other people. So it is likely that as we begin another round of production on these, that we will allow you to place an order for a brass version. It is a really cool option. It is actual brass plating. It's not an anodized color. It is an electroplated process that's done to the aluminum. So it's fairly unique, fairly special, and something that is a very cool conversation piece. However, if you prefer just the straight up black, those are available today and now. To get them, you can find it at XLCSdesigns.com. If you're interested in a custom version, shoot us an email. We'll put you on a list. And with that, if you have any other questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below or shoot us an email at contact@xlcsdesigns.com. Be sure to hit like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.